Okay, so picture this. Your town is right on the verge of becoming a city. You've been working for years to make it happen, but right as you're about to cross the finish line, the rules completely change, and your dream suddenly seems impossible. What do you do? Well, that's not a hypothetical. We're going to dive into the true story of a huge legal battle that really makes you question what a city even is and whether our laws are truly fair.
At the end of the day, this whole entire conflict boils down to one single powerful question. Is it fair to bend the rules for a select few, while everybody else has to play by a much harder set of standards? Just keep that question in the back of your mind as we unpack the wild case of the 16 cities.
All right, so let's set the scene. We're going back to the early 2000s. For a long time, the path to becoming a city in the Philippines was pretty straightforward. But then, boom, a new law comes along and just flips the whole script, creating this new, much higher hurdle for any town with city-sized dreams.
And here it is, plain as day. For years, if your town wanted to become a city, it needed an annual income of at least 20 million pesos. But in 2001, Congress passes Republic Act 9009. And just like that, overnight, the requirement quintuples to a whopping 100 million pesos. For a lot of places, this wasn't just a new hurdle, it was a brick wall.
So, you might be asking, why such a massive jump? Well, the man behind the law, Senator Aquilino Pimentel, put it pretty bluntly. He said it was to stop what he called the mad rush of towns trying to become cities. The big concern was that a lot of them weren't actually fiscally independent, they just wanted to get a bigger slice of the national tax pie.
So you have this new, super high bar, but a whole group of municipalities got caught right in the crossfire. They were already in the process of becoming cities when the rule changed, but they weren't about to let their dream die, and their persistence kicked off a years-long fight in the halls of Congress.
And I mean, just look at this timeline. It really shows you how hard they fought. Before the new law, you had 24 municipalities that were right on the cusp of cityhood. After the rule change, they pushed hard for an exemption. In the 12th Congress, they failed. Then, in the 13th Congress, they failed again, but they just would not quit. They switched up their strategy and started filing 16 individual bills, each one a separate shot at becoming a city.
And you know what? After all those years of lobbying, pushing through multiple sessions of Congress, their new strategy actually paid off. 16 of those municipalities got the special laws they needed. It looked like, finally, they were about to become cities. But their victory celebration was a little premature.
These laws became known as the Cityhood Laws, and every single one of them had a critical little detail tucked inside, a special clause that specifically exempted that municipality from the 100 million peso income rule. This was their golden ticket, their clever workaround. Or so they thought.
Well, as you can probably imagine, creating a special exemption for 16 towns didn't sit well with everyone. In fact, it sparked outrage. And it led to a massive legal challenge that would go all the way to the highest court in the land, the Philippine Supreme Court.
The main group leading the charge against these new laws? The League of Cities of the Philippines, or the LCP, which represents all the country's existing cities, and they had dozens of other cities backing them up. Their motive? Well, it pretty much all came down to one thing: money.
Take a look at how the national tax money, the internal revenue allocation, is divided up. Cities get a fixed 23% slice of that entire pie. The LCP's argument was super simple. Adding 16 new cities doesn't make the pie any bigger. It just means that 23% slice has to be divided among more people, so everybody's piece of the pie gets smaller.
So the whole legal fight really boiled down to two huge constitutional questions. First, does Congress even have the power to create cities with these kinds of special one-off laws, or do all the rules have to be in one central place? And second, does giving these 16 towns a special pass violate the Constitution's promise that everyone gets treated equally under the law? I mean, the entire fate of these 16 aspiring cities was hanging in the balance.
So after years of legal wrangling, the day of judgment was finally here. The Supreme Court was ready to hand down its decision on the 16 new cities and their very controversial laws. So, were they going to be allowed to stand, or were they about to be struck down?
The verdict came down like a hammer. The Supreme Court struck down all 16 of the Cityhood Laws, declaring every single one of them unconstitutional. But the reasoning behind the decision is what's really fascinating, and it points to a major conflict at the very heart of Philippine law.
The court's main argument was incredibly direct. They said, look, the Constitution is explicit. The rules for making a city must be in the local government code,
period. That means Congress can't just invent new criteria or create special exemptions in separate laws whenever it wants to. By writing that little exemption clause into each of the cityhood laws, Congress had broken a direct command from the Constitution itself.
But the court's ruling wasn't just about some legal technicality. It dove into the much deeper principle of fairness, a principle that is the bedrock of the Constitution. And this takes us right back to our opening question about equal treatment under the law. This is where something called the Equal Protection Clause comes in. It's a cornerstone of the Constitution, and the idea is actually pretty simple. The law has to treat everybody in a similar situation in the same way. The government isn't supposed to play favorites unless there's a very good, non-arbitrary reason to do so.
So the court looked at these 16 municipalities and asked, what makes you guys so special? And their only real claim was that they happened to have a bill pending in a previous Congress. The court's reaction was pretty scathing. They said that is not a substantial distinction. It's just a random historical fact, not a legitimate reason to create an exception. It was an unfair advantage, plain and simple.
And that right there is the core takeaway of this whole case. The Constitution demands one single, uniform set of rules for creating cities, and those rules have to be found in one place, the local government code. Now, this isn't just about legal technicalities, it's a fundamental principle of fairness, making sure that the path to cityhood is the same for everyone.
And so, this whole story leaves us with a final, really thought-provoking question. The Supreme Court drew a hard line. They prioritized uniform rules and equal application of the law. But should laws always be absolute? Is there ever a time when making an exception is not only warranted, but is actually the more just thing to do? This case really highlights a tension that's at the very heart of how we govern ourselves, that constant push and pull between the rule of law and the pursuit of fairness.